What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over several tips to hopefully help you win more games when you get these square or rectangular zones in Fortnite Chapter 7. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, or interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, comment down below what you guys think of the rectangular zones. I'm interested to hear what you guys think, and if you guys would like to use my code in the shop when getting anything, it is EvolveJake, just like my channel name is, and it is underneath the webcam at all times. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is I feel like I have to pay more attention to the zone, especially early on when we get these rectangular zones, than I have any other like storm shape that we've had in Fortnite. So the initial stage of the square or rectangular zone feels smaller to me than most other zones we have. Like typically in first zone, regardless of where you land, even if you aren't already in the zone, you're probably relatively close to it, so it's no big deal. But I have had some games with the rectangular zone where it's like across the map from me, and I need to kind of be paying attention to getting there quickly. That way I'm not just fully ignoring it and then making that situation much worse. So check the storm when first zone spawns, see if it is a rectangular zone, see if it's super far away from you or if you are kind of chill. I feel like a lot of people probably already do check the zone in first zone, but me personally, it's not something I usually pay attention to very much. And this is something you kind of need to be doing at every stage throughout the game, because as the game progresses, the way the zone shrinks can be really drastic. Once you get into those skinny, like rectangular zones, if you're on the edge of one of those and then it goes to the other edge, that's actually a decent amount of distance you need to go. When the storm is a circle, kind of no matter how it shrinks, you're probably going to be relatively close to where it went if, you know, you were already in zone. But with these rectangular ones, you know, you could be at Riptides and they need to make it all the way to the desert if you get one of those like drastic zone pulls on one of like the rectangular ones. So just pay attention to the storm throughout the course of the game. That way something like that doesn't really cost you. I think the biggest change with these rectangular zones is, as I said, after like zone 2 or 3, you get into like these skinny rectangular zones. And when that happens, I feel like the game pretty much just becomes close range fights. These skinny rectangle zones, it's small, but really long. And so anybody who's on your side of zone is going to be really close to you. And the people who aren't really close to you are really far away. And because of this, I feel like it makes the game entirely like close range oriented. I don't know if I'm alone on this, but it feels very fast paced and chaotic if you are on like the populated side of the zone. So while the zone can be really large, like I said, you might need to go from Riptides all the way to the desert. That's a long distance. It feels like it plays very small at all times because anybody near you is going to be like really near you. You don't really have like long range fights in these zones, I feel like. And because of that, I feel much more inclined to use SMGs when it is a square zone. So I made a video earlier this week about the best like aggressive loadout. Part of why I made that video was so I could reference it in this video, because I like using the SMGs. It's fun. It's a nice change of pace. A lot of times I'll just kind of pick based on rarity or what I have access to or what I feel like doing. You know, if I've played several Deadeye games in a row, I'm fine using one of the SMGs if I get a high rarity one. But in these square zones, I pretty much always want to go for like the SMG like aggressive setup, because as I said, it feels like the zone is very small at pretty much all times, even though it is very large. The people who you're going to be interacting with and the people who are going to be threats to you are going to be very close. So having that optimal like close to medium range fighting setup with one of the SMGs, like the Hollow Rush SMG or the Flex SMG, I think is something that can give you a huge advantage in these square zones if you do kind of make that shift in how you kind of play or what you choose to run based on the zone. Because it feels very small, another thing is that you can always expect to be getting third-partied in these zones. Again, it feels very kind of claustrophobic and congested and small if you have people near you when you get into these rectangular zones. So anytime you are fighting, expect to get third-partied. If a fight is going too long, this is a problem for you because more and more third parties are going to be coming. If you did just get done fighting, you know, don't let your guard down too much. Don't focus on looting too much. You want to always kind of get to safety, heal, and then look for potential third parties. And I've talked about this before in several videos. I've made several videos about dealing with third parties. But one of the most important things you can do to deal with third parties or help you survive more in those situations is just limit your exposure after fighting, limit how long your fights are going, which having that SMG is going to help with this because you're going to shred in medium range, in close range. But also just don't get caught off guard by it by expecting it to happen. Being aware and like accepting that this is likely going to happen anytime you fight in these rectangular zones can go a long way in helping you survive that situation. I think bunkers are also really helpful in these square zones. I don't really run them often. It kind of depends on if I don't have mobility. I still prefer to use 2 sets of shockwaves. But the way the zone is, as I said, it feels very small at all times. And where you are, there might not be very much cover, or there might not be like a good spot to play. And so having bunkers can really help with that because the zone just feels really small at all times. And when you think of this like an end game, typically an end game, the reason why bunkers are so helpful is because you don't have as much choice of where you want to go. And so you don't have as much choice of like what terrain you're going to be using and what cover you're going to be using. And being able to make your own cover and make your own safe position helps a lot. And the same is going to be true for these square or rectangular zones. The fact that it feels so small at all times, even when it isn't, really limits where you can go and how you can play. And having some sort of cover item is going to help you not just get screwed over by being in an unfortunate, spot because that's the way the game, kind of made you play. This also will help with the potential third parties, which is something that can go a long way. In any BR, being on edge of zone is beneficial because it limits the angles you have to worry about. Obviously, people can be in Storm and they can play in Storm and they can kind of tank Storm and try to make plays that way. But for the most part, if your back is to the Storm, you don't have to worry about that as much. And this is even more so true with the square zones because we have, corners. And so if you're in a corner, you don't have to worry about your back and you don't have to worry about one of those sides as much. And so playing on the edge of zone, I think, is still really beneficial for these square zones. And playing on the corners is even more so beneficial because you're, really limiting where you're exposed to. Because of that, I feel like the corners are often the edges are often the most like chaotic and congested areas for these square zones. But I do think it is still worth playing for them, especially once you get into the very end game, because very late in the match, when we get into those moving zones, it's a little square. And having end game zone, as you guys know, it's a lot about timing. It's a lot about what you're exposed to. And it's a lot about like not giving enemies like good openings on you. And so playing the corners of one of those squares, you do make yourself a more prime target, but you also limit the amount of angles you have to worry about. And the people in the corners, sure, they might be getting looked at more by everyone else. I would much rather be in one of the corners than be in the middle and be like one of the only players worrying about like 360 degrees around me. So I want to play the edge as much as possible, and I want to play the corners as much as possible in these square zones, even in like the mid game. As I said earlier, though, if you're on the edge and like, let's say it's zone 4 or 5 or something, you're in the skinny rectangles, but it isn't super small yet. If you're on the edge, it might pull to the opposite edge. And so you need to be really worried, or not really worried, but you need to be really mindful of what zone is doing and, how far it is pulling throughout the course of the game, because you can get a very severe pull with these rectangle zones if it goes from like one edge to the other, or I guess if you're on one edge and it goes to the complete other. So obviously having mobility is going to help a lot with that. Having a car is going to help a lot with that. But that is it for this video. I think at the end of the day, Fortnite is Fortnite. No matter what the zone is, you kind of want to play the same. There's just a few adjustments you might want to make with these rectangular zones. And the main ones were just kind of getting a more close range oriented setup, because a lot of the fights are going to be that way. And also being more mindful of the zones and where it's located, because the pull can feel really drastic. But let me know what you guys think of the rectangular zones down in the comments below. I really enjoy them. I feel like for the most part, the zone shape changes we've had in Fortnite hasn't really changed how the game plays too much. Like if I had a heart zone or a triangle zone or a snowman zone, I don't even know what other ones we've had. But for the most part, I just played the same. I just walked around and killed people. The zone kind of shrunk periodically. And I feel like it still had so much like surface area that the game didn't really play that much. But the rectangular, or it didn't play that much different. But these rectangular zones, I think, do play a good amount different. And I think it is a nice change of pace when I get one of these. And I like that it kind of encourages using a different setup and really rewards you for having those SMGs. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more. And I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.